Welcome, everybody, this afternoon to our time together. We come together by our affection and our appreciation of the ways Drake Martin's life intersected with ours. We gathered this morning for the worship service at Orchard Hill Church, where we shared some memories and we reflected and we were blessed. This afternoon, we hope to bring folks together to remember, to celebrate again and laugh and cry and take some more steps along the path of grief and healing that the last week has thrust all of us on when we least expected. This isn't what we planned to be gathered here for this afternoon, but we can be here for one another, and we can listen and we can share together. I'd like to begin with a poem. In Parker Palmer's book, Let Your Life Speak, he includes a portion of this poem by William Stafford. Sometime when the river is ice, ask me mistakes I have made. Ask me whether what I have done is my life. Others have come in their slow way into my thought, and some have tried to help or to hurt. Ask me what difference their strongest love or hate has made. I will listen to what you say. You and I can turn and look at the silent river and wait. We know the current is there, hidden, and there are comings and goings from miles away that hold the stillness exactly before us. What the river says, that is what I say. Ask me whether what I have done is my life. We gather here to talk about how our lives are impacted by knowing and working with Drake. Let me introduce myself. My name is Dave Glenn Burns. I'm the campus minister at the Wesley Foundation, and I'm in my 17th school year serving in the campus ministry and having the privilege of serving in the Campus Ministry Association. And I guess that kind of tenure makes me the old guy, and so I can represent the campus ministers, and we appreciate the way Drake has worked with us and invited us early on. But I would also like to share with you that, as Drake would know, I also am an ENFP on the Myers-Briggs indicator, an I on the DISC profile, and a woo with input and positivity influences on the Strengths Finder. So while we know generally what's going to happen this afternoon, and it's a good idea and we need to be here, let's see if we can, I'm going to rely on some of you to keep things moving along a little bit so that we don't just have such a great time that we lose track of what time it is and that the fact that you need to be other places. But it's been my privilege to interact with many of you, largely at Drake's invitation. I remember early on, one of my first tasks was to prepare a program or two for the RA's notebooks so that the RAs could use those for their presentations or programs on their dorms. And so I remember being very excited. Okay, we're going to be so busy doing these programs that we have to think about how good they are. And I think we had some really good programs, and Drake invited us to include those. And I'm still waiting for my first call. So if any of you, but we had the opportunity to work together on panels and times when we talked about religious diversity and sexuality issues. And so the really important work often happens around the edges of what we intend to. That's one of the things I appreciate about Drake. A couple of quotes. I shared this morning at the worship service that we all know that Drake liked quotes, and he would punctuate his PowerPoint presentations with quotes, most of them relevant, a lot of them memorable, and sometimes he would need to emphasize to make sure we knew what they were about. But one of the ones that seemed to me to be most appropriate that Dylan and Riley picked out was the quote by poet Ralph Waldo Emerson, which is, he reportedly has said, "I hate quotes." As I was reflecting and thinking about what kinds of stories I wanted to tell about Drake, because our hope is this afternoon there's lots of stories. There has to be some puns. There has to be a lot of laughter. Be thinking about the quotes that you think of when you think about Drake. Be thinking about the number of pun-offs that you might have had engaged by email, or the ways in which you were together. I remember several times when Drake and I were working out early in the morning at the WRC, the number of times that it would be time for us to go home, and we'd get to the back door, and Drake would have realized that he left his keys back up in the cubicle upstairs. Or he would come pick me up, or I would go pick him up in the morning, and he'd come out of the back door of his apartment still getting dressed, so that he was getting, we were going to begin working at 6 o'clock. And we usually got to the WRC about 6:15. And we were going to work and be done sharply at 6:45 so we could get home and get breakfasted and be ready to get to the office on time. And often it was about 6:45 that we were just getting around to getting to the exercising. And the number of times we got ready to go and he would get to the front desk and not have his ID card because he had left it someplace. Or I was impressed, maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but I think he had 2 or 3 ID cards in his car, hidden in different places. So if he couldn't find the one on the inside, there was one in the trunk. And then there was one someplace else. But there's a lot of great stories, and you don't really want to hear me talk all that much. I want to invite you to be thinking about some of the things that you would like to share. Some of you have prepared remarks. But I do want to appreciate a couple of specific things about Drake. One by way of another couple of quotes from Parker Palmer, who wrote, "If we want to grow as teachers, we must do something alien to the academic culture. We must talk to each other about our inner lives, risky stuff in a profession that fears the personal and seeks safety in the technical, the distant, and the abstract." And again, in another book, Parker Palmer says, "By choosing integrity, I become more whole. But wholeness does not mean perfection. It means becoming more real by acknowledging the whole of who I am." We appreciate the ways in which we saw glimpses of those that kind of growing, that kind of process in Drake, and how he drew that out among us. I want to share some of the highlights of Drake's life, some of the roles that many of you were involved with him, because it wasn't just about what he did, but it was the way that he interacted with others and he equipped others. Some of the facts about Drake's life, one of them that I find most impressive for me is that he graduated from Bowling Green State University in 1977 with a master's degree in college student personnel. That's significant to me because I started at Bowling Green State University as an undergraduate in the fall, right after Drake graduated, and I was dazzled by this round building on Bowling Green's campus that it hosted the college student personnel division. And I wondered what that was about. I couldn't figure out why you couldn't major in that as an undergraduate. It was only a graduate program. And then as I come here to do campus ministry, I find out that there's a number of other folks working at UNI whose paths have crossed at the Bowling Green campus in Bowling Green, Ohio. So go Fighting Falcons. I guess we can all celebrate. There's some good places there, but we're delighted to be here. Here's some of the things about Drake. He initiated the Lux Service Award with the University of Northern Iowa Homecoming Committee in 1984. He served on the Wesley Foundation Board of Directors on several occasions as early as 1984, and again in 2000 he chaired our program committee. He was a leader at St. Timothy's United Methodist Church in the early 1990s and was instrumental in their conversations around the whole issue of sexuality and being a welcoming congregation for persons of all sexual orientation. Began that conversation, which resulted then just a few years ago in St. Timothy's and in fact the Wesley Foundation, both self-selecting and identifying as reconciling ministries that are open and welcoming to everybody. Drake was part of the faculty staff group to get sexual orientation included in an anti-discrimination policies here on campus. Was involved in initiating the university's Project VIP, which is the Volunteers Are Important People position. Worked on initiating the UNI Transfer Student Orientation Task Force, initiated and taught physical fitness, personal finances class at St. John's Lutheran Church, facilitated the Anti-Defamation League, Campus of Difference, faculty and staff workshops, chaired the Diversity Orientation Collaboration Project, was co-chair and initiator of the university's Leadership Coordination Team, chaired the University of Northern Iowa Alcohol Task Force Subcommittee, chaired the Diversity Committee of the University of Northern Iowa's Division of Student Affairs, was an initiator of the Safe Zone Ally program at the University of Northern Iowa, campus coordinator for the MAP Works project at the University of Northern Iowa. And a couple of honors that Drake received were the University of Northern Iowa Diversity Matters Award in 2011. He received the Regent Staff Excellent Award, which is presented annually to P&S employees from Regents institutions who have made outstanding professional contributions during their careers and have maintained the quality of excellence throughout their years of service. Drake received this award in 1994. On January 20th, 2011, Drake received one of 6 University of Northern Iowa Diversity Matters Award, recognizing individuals for their efforts to help the university achieve its diversity-related goals by working to promote a community characterized by inclusiveness and diversity. Drake made a difference in many ways, but the awards that were so appropriate and due to Drake, also, it was very important for him to be initiating awards for students. So Drake was involved in launching countless ways of recognizing student leadership. It was important to Drake to be talking about when a person graduates from UNI, they are equipped to be good citizens as well as scholars. And it's about the service, and it's about the way we are as individuals. One of the other awards that Drake won is the Robert E. Moser Professional Enrichment Award. The Robert E. Moser Professional Enrichment Award recognizes an individual in the Upper Midwest Region Association of College and University Housing Officers who has made outstanding contributions to the professional development of their colleagues in college student housing. Recipients of the award have established a record of involvement in professional enrichment opportunities on their own campus within UMR-QHO and within other professional organizations at the state, regional, or national level. Achievements are a reflection of the individual's commitment to enhancing the skills, knowledge, or motivation of fellow professionals. Drake received this award in early November 2011. Present today with us is the namesake of this award, Bob Moser, who retired from the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point, who is known as a great leader in the Student Affairs Division. Maybe Bob could stand and be recognized for this award, named in his honor. Lynn Reddington, who was Drake's supervisor in the Department of Residence, informed Drake that he was the recipient of this prestigious award. Fortunately, as things would work out, that was recorded. We have a recording of that very moment when Lynn informed Drake about his award. So if I could direct your attention to the screen above us, we'll watch this moment.
Good morning, Lynn.
Good morning, Drake. I have some good news for you.
Well, I am sure I have not heard it before.
What?
If you've heard it before, it isn't called news, it is called laws.
Nice hunting.
Thanks. I once did an entire theater production on puns. Really, it was just a play on words.
Okay, I wanted to tell you that we really appreciate how good of a job you're doing.
Thank you. I try to just be a team
are ready. Anyway, you have worked very hard here, you and I.
Yes. I usually work 24 hours and then call it a day.
Right. You have done so much for our department that we wanted to recognize you.
I am sure most people recognize me. I could just hear my name like more.
Fun stuff. Anyway, after all you have done for SN and Map Works and diversity efforts, and your work on our campus and in our region, etc., you will be receiving an award at the UMR conference.
Wow. Well, I will be sure to make an appointment at the dentist afterwards.
Why?
To get some fluff for my new life.
Never mind. We are going to give the award to Schmidt instead.
He does a pretty shitty job. Are you going up?
Yes.
Then I guess I can leave well enough alone.
At this time, I'd like to invite some of you to be thinking about and then be willing to share stories, funny stories, puns, memories that you have that would be part of our celebration all together. If you would come to the microphone there in the center and make sure to identify yourself and also your relationship with Drake, how you connected with Drake. And we would invite as many, several have self-identified already at the beginning who want to say some things, but there's room for several others. So I'd invite Amanda to lead off.
Hi, my name is Amanda Mesirow, and I'm the coordinator over in Dancer Hall. First, would like to apologize to Schmitty for that video. That was made with Lynn's permission. But would like to thank the family for hosting all of us today because Drake was very important to everyone here, and I have the privilege also of supervising Riley, who is an outstanding RA, so that's been very good. But when I was asked to share some funny stories about Drake, it was hard to pick some. It was hard to pick any that might be appropriate. But David, I'm glad he mentioned MBTI because it was right here in this room just a few months ago during RA Spring Workshop training. Drake was going through MBTI and explaining the different personalities to RAs, and I'm sitting next to Riley, and he was explaining his personality and how, big idea person and the philosophical stuff and all the details, and it takes forever. And then he said, and then there's the personality types who just want to get things done and get really impatient with that. And I turned to Riley and I said, and now you know what it's like for me to meet with your father. So a colleague from Kansas who sent his condolences said that, he said, I know that you and Drake had a lively relationship, and that's a really good way of putting it. We did, and we talked about all sorts of things and joked about all sorts of things, and he did often invite me to speak on diversity panels, which I really appreciated. We were talking about one of them, which was going to be on the differences between faiths, and I'm of the Jewish faith, and we were talking about that, and Drake referenced something from the New Testament, and I said, oh, I'm unfamiliar with that. And he said, oh, you are? And I said, yeah, see, my people think that's the sequel, Drake. Which he really liked. We also had a conversation about, he did the Panther Planner, and so he entered all that information, and I was flipping through it, kind of proofreading. And Rosh Hashanah, one of the Jewish holidays, was spelled differently. And so I emailed him, and I said, oh, hey, Drake, just letting you know, Rosh Hashanah is spelled this way. And he emailed me back, and he said, well, Google said it's spelled this way. Okay. I said, well, 28 years of whatever, Drake. So we did argue about that a little bit, but what I liked most about him is even when we would butt heads, which was quite a bit, because we both were very stubborn, we often came to a place of understanding after that, and that was nice. And the final story I'll share about him was for you Harry Potter fans out there. When he came to our RLC Winter Workshop training, he had just recently grown the kind of beard goatee thing, and he was a little self-conscious about it. He's like, oh, do you like it? Do you not? And I was like, yeah, I really like it. And one of our coordinators, Lisa Jasinski, over here, said, you kind of look like your evil twin. And then she said, your name can be Draco. So that was one of his nicknames. We called him Draco, but he is very missed, and I will miss our word wars. So thank you very much. Thank you all for being here too.
My name is Michael Fleming, and I'm a faculty member here, and got to know Drake through work that I did on campus, but really the way I came to know Drake is for years and years on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 a.m. in the morning, we'd play racquetball. And racquetball was kind of a forum for us to kind of process life and talk about life, and talked a lot about lots of different issues. As I kind of been reflecting since Drake's death, thinking about some of the conversations, and one conversation that always came back is the amazement of how his daughters were developing. If you can think about the twinkle in Drake's eyes when he'd have this phrase like, "Isn't that cool? You know what they just did." So he cherished and he no doubt loved his daughters dearly. The other thing that kind of reminded me of Drake, and this week I was back in the rec center, is as we would walk in, it was like he was sprinkling puns and laughter as we went down the hallway. And the women at the check-in, you know, sometimes they just kind of roll their eyes at Drake. And we would have our battle on the court, and we'd sit outside the court and huff and puff. And if you're not familiar with the rec center, there's a bench right by the water fountain, and we'd move over there and huff and puff more and talk about how old we're getting, and talk about how I'm moving more toward a Drake Martin hairstyle. But meeting some of the family earlier, it might be Martin Brothers hairstyle. But one of the things that always kind of was kind of humorous is, you know, be sitting there and people would come down from the workroom to get a drink. And Drake always had a pun, always had some saying. I don't know how many thousands of ways you can make some pun out of a water fountain and drinking, but he did it. And just like that video up there where the woman kind of looked at, the people that didn't know Drake first would like this look like, who is this guy? And then, you know, within either later that day or in days, you know, they would come to appreciate that. So that was kind of sprinkling of Drakeism throughout the rec center. On the court, I learned a lot about Drake as well, and there are kind of a couple lessons that I took away from that. Seems like when Drake would stumble or fall, he would pause, and then he would, okay, like this mental check, okay, I'm okay, and let's go. Or if he'd make a bad shot, there would be like two reactions, like Drake Martin, you know, he'd after himself, or it would be like, almost like, how in the heck did I do that? Okay, let's move on. And there was a period of time we were playing racquetball that he injured his arm, and he was out. He couldn't play racquetball right-hand. He was a right-hander, and he couldn't play racquetball. But he didn't want to stop, so he played racquetball left-handed. And he continued, and to my amazement and disappointment, he continued to get better. And my ability to be a left-hander who was a racquetball player that was not a left-hander but was becoming more proficient at left-hand, causing some despair on my part. But he, you know, that was kind of the way he was, persevere. And, you know, when I think about, you know, his passing, you know, if the kind of image that comes to mind is, you know, when that happened, there was probably a couple of things that happened. One is he like, Drake Martin, how could you have done this? Or like, wow, okay, let's move on. And I can, as the good Lord reached down and picked him up, I just wonder what kind of pun, what kind of joke he had all ready for the Lord.
Hello, I'm Bob Moser from UW Stevens Point, and my wife Mary and I have known, or had known Drake for many years. He came in 1977 to UW Stevens Point. I was working in residence life, and he became very quickly a friend and has stayed a friend through our entire time together up until this point. There are several things about Drake that I wanted to share with you, and I think they've been mentioned in other places, but one thing he was noted for was his huge heart. And as you've mentioned, sir, that he loved his daughters, and he spoke every time that we met, and my wife and I would meet with him, he would talk about his family and his daughters and how much they meant to him. He loved you and I. He loved the Panthers. He loved the students that he worked with and the staff. And he was in so much better place than he'd ever found himself, other than UWSP, to be here on your campus. One of the other things, he was a wonderful communicator, and he shared with an intensity and a focus on whoever he was talking to, and you felt illuminated. You felt that there was some kind of magical light that surrounded the two of you when he was talking. And I always felt so much better after I had talked with him. And I would come home from a conference after meeting with Drake and talking, and I would tell my lovely wife, Mary, I would say, I am the most wonderful person in the world. And she said, Bob, you're not. And I said, no, I am. I'm the most wonderful, the most interesting person in the world. She said, you were talking to Drake again, weren't you? Yes, I was. And you remember, Bob, how many times I've told you you're not the most interesting person? Whoever is talking to Drake, they are the most interesting person. It has nothing to do with you. And I'm sure many of you who've talked with Drake have felt the same way. Something very special happens, whether it's humorous or whether it's warmth or whether it's his great heart, but something magical happens. And I'm sure you don't have somebody, a partner, who brings a reality check into it, and so you feel special taking that away. I also agreed with a number of the comments about his humor, except for the puns. I couldn't quite get into that, but he did have a wonderful sense of humor. And one of the traditions among the hall directors at Stevens Point was to hold a Christmas party or celebration. And at that time, the host would share different food, and we'd all bring potlucks. And for some reason, one of the hosts at this particular party decided to bake a lot of pancakes and share them. And as we were leaving, unbeknownst to us, somebody, it could have been Drake, left the pancakes on the Christmas tree, in the shelves in the closet, in the bathtub. And thereafter it was called the Drake Martin rule, which was that nothing that you brought in could be left. You must take all your things with you. So there's two things I want you to remember, the Drake Martin rule and the Drake effect. I was so glad that he came into my life, and I'm very, very sad that he's not with me as part of my life anymore. Thank you very much.
I'm Joan Thompson. I'm a health educator here at UNI. Drake started in September of '81, and I started in February of '82. And we became fast friends. He's been in my life and my husband Jim's life for many years. He came to our wedding. He came to my parents' funerals. He was present, well, not present at my daughter's births. But in fact, when my oldest was born, she's now 26, I was scheduled to go in the hospital at 7 and to be induced because she was 2 weeks overdue. And, he called about an hour after I got there and, told the nurses, we didn't have cell phones then, asked the nurses to come in and tell me that he was thinking about me. And he did that several times. And I was in my third hour of pushing, and the nurse came in and said, Drake wants to know if everything came out okay. I think that gave me enough incentive to give one more push. And she was born. And, Drake was just always there, almost to the point of annoying sometimes. I say that with much love because we just care so deeply for him. We had a plan to meet after our trips. Jim and I took a trip to Alaska a few weeks ago. He went to California, and we wanted to make a point of talking when we got back because he'd always call like right now and say, you want to get together? And we'd always have plans, and so we decided to put something on the calendar. So I was so grateful that just a couple weeks ago we got to talk about our trips and how exciting that was. And it's true, you felt when you talked to Drake that you were the most important person in the world at that moment. And I think that's a skill that he had, and I think that's something that I'll miss so deeply about him because he was so good at that. Drake made me feel normal because I mess up a lot, and he would always try to one-up me. And I wanted to talk to Bob to get the details about this, but I want to tell you what I remember is that I was talking to him, I felt terrible. I scheduled 2 students at the same time in my office. And that's horrible because you can only see one at a time. And that meant I really inconvenienced someone, and I had to reschedule with them. I was telling Drake about this, and he said, well, that's nothing. Listen to this. And he said that one morning he was supposed to pick up Bob Hartman to go to the airport. And he either put the wrong day down or had the wrong time, completely blew Bob off. And I don't know how Bob got to the airport that day, and I said, oh, that is bad. But he was always trying to make you feel better, and he usually did. Drake walked with us during a lot of hard times and good times, and I will just really miss him, and I will just always ask myself, what would Drake do in tough times? So, thanks.
I'm his little brother. And so when I'm done, I need everybody to come up that's already spoke and say what they were going to say what they said earlier, because we just got here, because I don't want to miss anything. My brother, as most of you already know, because you wouldn't be here if you weren't, is an inspiration to most everybody he comes in contact with. And as a little brother, to know, not only today hearing this, but to know what an effect he had on everybody he came in contact with is kind of hard as a little brother, because wow, how do you keep up with that guy? He's amazing. Probably the best and biggest thing he did for me was about 24 years ago. I had recently had my 3rd divorce. My big brother, come out, hang out with me. Let's just be brothers. Okay. I came out pretty dejected, pretty down. Of course, Drake brings you up like he does. While I'm here, I find probably the most perfect Iowa girl. I go home, 3 months later, we wed. 23 years later, you couldn't find two happier people. Part of it's because of my brother. Now the funny part. Without being too distasteful, year before last, Drake says, we got to get together. We never get together enough. 2,000-mile distance, it was hard. I live in California, sorry. And let's get together. Okay, let's meet halfway. We meet in Colorado at a beautiful lake, hang out, ride bikes, just do all that outdoor stuff that brothers do and bond. First night in the motel room, we decided to share a room. Why not? It's cheap. We get two beds. We're sitting there visiting. Oh, man, this is great. Da-da-da-da-da. All of a sudden, he decides it's time for him to go to the bathroom, take his meds. He jumps out of bed and heads for the bathroom in the buff. And I'm like, I love you, but there's a limit here. And to him, it was like, hey, we're brothers, no big deal. It kind of freaked me out. But Drake, his heart being so big and the way he is, it didn't even faze me. I just want to tell you that I have probably 24 more stories, but I'm not going to do that to you today. But I would really enjoy hearing any stories anybody has, because I know there's a lot of good ones. You guys, in a way, are probably closer to my brother than I was because of your proximity and your daily contact. And as you know, I love him so much. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ashley Wright now. I just got married. I almost forgot my last name. I was an RA for 3 years. Sorry, I'm kind of struck. And just like his brother said, got very close to the man. He touched me, and I know so many other RAs, in such a special way. He really prepared us. I was talking with some other RAs earlier, and he taught us what it meant to be a community and what it meant to support one another. And it just shows everyone that's here right now just how he has played a part in your life and what he's done in mine. And everything that he's taught me, I will never forget that. I've learned so much being an RA, and I know that it's prepared me for the rest of my life. As a teacher, as a wife, as a friend, as a coworker, Drake has really touched me and has taught me so much what it means to be inclusive and really what diversity looks like and how we can care for one another and do that. So I just thank him so much that he's touched so many people and he's touched my life and how big of a role he's played at UNI, and that in itself, how many people are going to leave UNI and just impact the rest of the world. And one thing that I was really hoping was going to happen today was that they were going to play Nickelback, because the RAs know what I'm talking about. One year he played a song, and that's how I'll forever remember Drake as Nickelback. So thank you.
Okay, I'm Diane Schroeder. I'm his little sister. Well, that's the little one over there, but anyway. Yeah, I'm not the little one, actually. Anyway, I just thought I'd give you a couple stories about Drake as a younger person. And one of the pictures that they showed earlier was of us shooting Army men with rubber bands. And this is something Drake and Dwight used to be here at UNI. I don't know if anybody remembers him, but he's at home and he's hoping to come out again soon. And Drake and Dwight used to line the Army men up when they were kids and get the rubber bands, and boy, they just went at it. So when Drake and Riley were out last year, Dwight bought a bag of Army men and a bag of rubber bands, and we all got together and shot the Army men. So they had a ball. I mean, it was great. It was great. Yeah, I showed that clip that you saw earlier of him getting the award. Oh gosh, I thought I was going to die when I saw that. And I sent it to all my coworkers. They're going, "Oh, brother." And I showed it to my son the other night because he had not seen it, and he's 33 years old. And I heard him in his bedroom afterwards just laughing because I was showing it to my husband after that. And he's laughing and crying, and I could hear him. And my husband's looking at it, and, well, you have to go back like 30 years when we were first married, and he first met Drake and was introduced to puns. And my husband goes, "Okay, well, let me know when Drake comes, because when the two of you get together, okay, this isn't a pretty sight." So anyway, I was showing him the video, and he's just looking at it, and afterwards he goes, I don't get it." And I'm going, "Yeah, okay, well, nothing's changed in 30 years. Yeah." Oh, goodness. And then a couple of times, I think the same time when he was out with Riley a couple of years ago, he left, and I understand this is common for Drake. I got it. We're all D's. Drake, Dwight, Diane, Doug, Dana. We stutter a lot. Anyway, Drake left his inserts for his shoes. Very important inserts. And so my mom says, "We've got to get these mailed to him," and I was like, "Okay." So I come out and, and I'm looking at these things, and I mean, they look terrible. I mean, it's like, he really wants these? It's like, wow, okay, So it costs us how much? Like $40 to send the things back to him? I'm thinking, wow, okay. But, he needed them because, the guy couldn't walk. And, but, stuff like that, makes him so endearing. And we love my older brother. He's just like a jewel. He really was. And it was hard to hear the news. And I think that his legacy will go on in his children. They're just awesome, awesome girls. And we just are very grateful for this family, because Drake loved being here. He loved everybody he worked with, and he loved what he did. Loved it from his heart. So thank you so much.
I'm Schmitty. I've worked with Drake for about 15 years, and Drake, I promise to not do a Schmitty job. So what I'm going to do, this is from Jenny Connelly, who's one of the assistant director of admissions, and apologizes she can't be here, but asks that I read this today. "I first heard of Drake from my husband back in 2002 when he was an RA. He talked about this guy who always told these corny jokes, and I would meet him that following spring in RA training. Whoa. I'd heard a lot of corny jokes in my day, but he took the cake. During my time as an RA, Drake seemed to know everyone, literally all 80-some RAs, which I thought was incredible. I then went on to work with him during my grad experience here and there, but really got to connect again when I became the RLC in Hageman. During this time, I watched Drake connect with my staff as a mentor, but also like a father. He talked about his girls so much and was so proud of everything. Leads in school plays, one of the top French students, etc. My girls loved to retell Drake's corny jokes at staff meetings. My husband and I were expecting our first child, and Drake shared so many of his parenting stories. When Noah arrived, he visited in the hospital and brought us supper. As I moved on to another position, we had at least monthly lunches and still stayed connected. I grew to appreciate him in another light as I realized how much he did on campus. When we had our second child, he again came with a meal and stopped by to check in. He sent my mom a retirement card. He did those little things that most never remember to do. He always told my parents what a good job they did. My brother and sister-in-law went on to be RAs as well. My husband put it best. Drake accepted everyone for who they were, no matter what. I would bet that Drake is someone almost everyone at UNI has heard of, if not met, and he would never think to brag about that. Thank you, Drake, for your corny jokes, for teaching me how to be a better professional and how to be a good parent.
Hello, everyone. Today I'm taking notes from a Mr. Potato Head notebook because I think it would be appropriate because Drake and I were best buds. So, my name is TJ Warren, and I knew Drake from being an RA and from being a graduate hall director. And there are three things that I'd really like to share about Drake today that I'll always remember. Drake was definitely the Jedi master of puns, and I was the guy that wanted to learn from him. I wanted to be his apprentice when it came to puns. when we'd sit in our L team meetings, he'd say something punny, and I'd be down in the corner like, yes, that was awesome, while everybody else is rolling their eyes. And but I loved his puns and his sense of humor. Two, he was incredibly skilled. You were talking about rubber bands and shooting, the soldiers, the toy soldiers. I actually saw him kill a fly with a rubber band once. I mean, he was intense. And I also played racquetball with him several times, and he was very skillful in racquetball. And I think out of the hundreds of times that we played, I won maybe one time. He was so good at that, and I enjoyed those conversations as well. Lastly, for those who know me, I'm a huge fan of Superman and heroes in general. And Superman's my favorite because he humbly seeks to do good in the world with his strengths. And I think that's exactly what Drake did. He is Superman in my eyes. He used his charm to lift up people and his listening ear to help those in need. He always made time for people. He believed in the smallest things, that they would make a difference. In June, he sent my wife and I an anniversary e-card, and it's been 4 years since we got married, and he still remembers it to this day. He called me the next day to check in on me as well. But all in all, I believe Drake was a Superman that always encouraged us to look up into the sky, to think big, and to be more. Drake, Superman, we'll miss you greatly, but we'll always remember what you taught us and how you made us feel. Pretty darn super. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dylan. I'm Drake's daughter, one of two. I just wanted to iterate, and I know you all know this, but how much UNI was my dad's life. I think his priorities were Riley and Dylan, UNI, and pie, somewhere around there. Puns, just kind of covered all that. Some of my earliest memories are sitting in a little wagon, eating banana bread and watching the homecoming parade, and going to the presidential picnic and going to meetings, meeting generations of hall coordinators who knew my childhood. Things I didn't know happened that they told me, this time when you were 2, apparently you didn't. Okay. I have pictures of people that I have no idea who they are, and they run up to me. And if you were to go through my dad's closet, there are probably 4 or so different generation more of the age of his UNI sweatshirts. There is one, pretty recent one where it's nice, not stained or anything. Then there's one I'm pretty sure he got it before he even started working here. You can't even tell what it says anymore. Little bits have come off, the neck is coming off, and once in a while we'd let him wear it out of the house. Usually we had him stay inside. But he definitely showed, not just in his passion for his work, but everything that he wore and, dressed Riley and I in. A lot of my baby pictures have my dad holding me, making some goofy face with UNI across his chest. And I also can't tell you how many times I've had people come up to me who I've never seen before. They just recognize me, or they hear my name and they go, "You're Drake's daughter." Oh my God, I love him. And so it just, start telling me stories about him. So you all saw him, most of you, in the UNI setting and in the workplace, but at home, he was a kind of different guy. You'd see him in the button-down and the tie. A lot of times there were the kind of Hawaiian shirts, the short sleeve, the khakis, and the sandals and the baseball cap at home. Once in a while it was the half pulled up sweatpants and the kind of, tennis shoes untied around the house. And whereas he worked so very hard at UNI, that man taught me how to nap at home. I particularly remember a day, I think it was kind of rainy, and our good friends the Kleins, their boys Connor and Noah, came over, and we were going to watch all 3 Lord of the Rings in the day. First, of course, my dad had them help with the dishes, and then we went downstairs, and within about 12 minutes, my father was dead asleep on the floor, along with Connor, I remember, and for the duration of the rest of the day, we were just completely asleep, and woke up and went, "Those are some good movies." No, and so you all know, the only movie he didn't fall asleep in when going with Riley and I in our childhood, Mulan. Just so, I'm not sure what that says, but one more thing about him at home. The puns carried through all parts of his life, and the only Halloween costume I ever remember him wearing made him Count Dracula. So there you go.
I'm the other daughter. I'm Riley. And yeah, like Dylan said, my dad's life was pretty much you and I, and he loved it here. And yeah, he things I've learned and stuff in the past year as an RA are just, I've learned more in this past year and working with him and working in his department and his understanding what he's been talking about for the past 20 years. Like, I actually learned what the letters RA mean. I had no idea until about 18. But he's had a lot of experience at colleges and doing trips and stuff like that. He also has a lot of experience with desserts and pastries and things like that. And sometimes that gets him in trouble. He told me a story one time. I don't know the specifics to it, but I know he was on a trip and it was with other coworkers, and it was a long drive, and they went to some house party or something that night. He was starving, he was tired, there were brownies available, so he had a few. And a few minutes later was talking to somebody, and he said he kind of felt a little weird, and they said, "Did you have a brownie?" And he said, "Yeah, I had a few." And they looked at him like, "Oh, no." And the next day, there was a conference or something he had to be up early for, and it was bad. It was pretty bad. He had glasses and was holding on to somebody the whole time. But that's his love for pastries and sweets and just innocent appreciation of those small, sweet things. So that's one story. Another second story I want to share, it kind of reiterates the pun thing and how that is definitely being passed down generation to generation, for good or worse. But we were at Shields one time getting our bikes taken care of because biking was a big thing for us, and I actually learned how to bike here on campus. And we were up there waiting for them to get fixed, and the fish and tackle place is right next to the bike place. And this was like 2003 or 4, Bush administration. And so I'm looking at the fish tackle and stuff, and I kind of pull one down, and I go, "Dad, it's a weapon of mass destruction." And he just died. Like, he just lost it. He was way too proud for that. Way too proud. Like, send it into Reader's Digest. Try to get a little cash or something out of that. So the puns will definitely, maybe not as frequent, maybe not as intense and perfect right on the spot delivery, but they'll live on. I'm sure he's kind of opened the floodgates to permission, so if anybody feels punny, go for it. But yeah, he just always tried to put a smile on people's face, and I just try to do my best. If I can ever be half of the light that he was every time we walked into a room or into Walmart, I mean, he just tried to make the cashier's day and usually succeeded. So thank you all for being here. I hate that this is what it took to see how many people he's affected, but it's incredible and humbling and inspiring, and I can't wait to start this year and just go into it with the love and support that you guys have shown. So thank you.
We will be wrapping this up in a second, but we have time for about one, maybe two, if there's somebody that really needs to share.
Hello, my name is Chris Kelly, and I was a hall coordinator here from 92 to 97, and my wife Patty was in student activities during that same time. And it's tough being back here. Drake had an impact on our family and has a connection to our family. Our oldest son, Kelton, was given his name by Drake. Drake decided to take the first 3 letters of my last name and the last 3 letters of my wife's maiden name, combine him, and Kelton's the big guy standing in the middle of the back of the room there. So I remember when Drake was coming up with names, when Patty and I weren't necessarily sold on it, he goes, it will work anyway. He said he can be the starting quarterback, and they'll do the announcements of, Kelton Kelly, just roll off their tongues. And he said he could be, a judge, the Honorable Kelton Kelly, and it still sounds just as good. Last time we saw Drake was at Kelton's graduation party, and Drake was very proud of the man that Kelton's become, and he let Kelton know that, and he let our family know that. The other connection he has is our son Brennan. He's his godfather, and Brennan had that connection with him and shared that faith, and it's going to be tough for Brennan not to have one of his godfathers around anymore. And our daughter Regan, who was born after we left Cedar Falls, when she came back, she got a chance to know Drake. I'm not sure if she appreciated his humor all that much, but I think part of that has to do with the humor of her own father. So he meant a lot to us. I hear the racquetball stories. When the Cedar Falls Rec Center opened, Drake and I christened the courts there, and it was the 6 o'clock in the morning, and yes, the dressing coming out the door, forgetting his inserts. I hate to burst your bubble, but he played left-handed against me when he hurt his right elbow, so he had lots of practice. So if he told you he'd never done that before, but it was amazing the conversations and the competition that we had on the racquetball courts. When we left Cedar Falls the first year, we had a tornado that hit our town, and Patty and I were in separate places, and we came back to the place that felt comfortable, which was Cedar Falls, and we left our 2 boys here who at the time were under 2 and under 5, and left them with Drake and Carolyn and the girls because that was their family that they had here in Cedar Falls. And so we are missing a big part. I was thinking when I was in the back of the room, should I do this or not? There's 2 jokes that stick out of me from Drake, and the first one I'll tell you, and Regan will roll her eyes, but the second one will be part of participation. But the first one was, do you know why cannibals don't eat clowns? Because they're fun guys. Now the second one is got a couple parts, and this is where you need to participate. I'm going to ask you 2 questions. The first question I want you to ask me is what I do for a profession. And the second thing, because this is something Drake was always working on, is how do you help you improve yourself? So then ask me what I could do to improve in my profession. So I'm a comedian. Timing.
Well, I would like to, before we move into the last phase, thank the people that put all the work into making this possible. The storytelling at a time like this is critical, and the sharing and the remembering and the laughing and the crying. We want to invite you to continue that. There are refreshments afterwards. A couple special things yet to happen, but I do want to draw your attention to some of the quotes that are on the back and the apple crisp recipe. There's countless remarks that are on Facebook. Enjoy that and be blessed by the comments that come up. I'd like to invite Lynn Reddington to come forward and lead us in something.
Thanks, Dave. I thought I would share one quick story, Riley, if I may. Last week, Drake, the Residence Life Coordinators, and I were sitting around in training, and we're coming up with expectations for each other. And the coordinators had one expectation for Drake, and that was, don't complicate things. So I shared that with Riley, and Riley's comment was, wow, Dad, epic fail. So I'm going to hang on to that. The other thing that we did during training was we all read the book called This I Believe, which comes from the NPR radio show, where different people write down their belief statements. And true to Drake's form, I had asked for these last Monday. He gave his to me on Wednesday and then tweaked it and gave it to me again on Thursday because it wasn't quite right. So you all have this on your programs, and so I'm not going to read it, but I do want to make sure that you take the time to do so because it talks about the 4 guiding principles that Drake lived by: his purpose, trust, courage, and grace. And whether Drake was making a joke, going to a meeting, having a conversation with somebody, attending a service, it didn't matter what Drake was doing, he embodied and he lived those 4 principles. Thank you.
I mentioned earlier that Drake started the Gold Star Award program in 1989, and it's my pleasure to announce today that the Gold Star Award has been renamed the Drake Martin Gold Star Award, recognizing student leaders in residence halls who demonstrate outstanding leadership and contributions to the Department of Residence. And steps will be taken to rename the wall and the place where the Gold Star recipients are recognized. It will be designated the Drake Martin Gold Star Award. Now I'd like to invite you to, as we close, to, if you would care to step across the hall to the Georgian Lounge where there will be refreshments, some delicious apple crisp and pie, and lots of opportunities to continue this. And so to conclude, I would like to offer this blessing when at the Wesley Foundation, when we have our worship, and this is true no matter what your belief system is. The prophet Micah has the verse in Micah 6:8, and it seems like it speaks about how Drake lived his life, and an encouragement for us to live our lives in the same way wherever we're coming from. And the prophet Micah says, "What's required of you, my friend, but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. So may it be with you." Amen.